Hey guys, what's going on? It's If You Have to Pick 3. I'm Matt.
And I'm Zach.
If you haven't joined us, well, these episodes, we go ahead and we are presented with a list. We come up with a top 3 in whatever the category is, and then we fight out for the final, or Zach proposes his famous ultimatums in what should make the final top 3 list, and then we go from there.
Yeah, that's a nice way to put it. It's me handing you on a platter what the 3 should be, because you know I'm right. You know I'm right.
Sometimes.
Always. Anyway.
So what are we doing this time?
So, one of my famous questions. Matt, are you ready to feel old?
I suppose.
When you think of Iron Maiden, who do you think?
Bruce Dickinson.
Who else?
The fans, because that's who they do it for.
You suck, Matt. You suck at what I'm trying to build up to. No, you think of one name. Eddie, one of the most iconic mascots, not just in metal, but in all of rock, dare we say, is Iron Maiden's Eddie. And believe it or not, this February marks the 40th anniversary of Eddie's first appearance on an Iron Maiden cover. It was Running Free, the single. It was released before the self-titled Iron Maiden album came out, which celebrates 40 years in April of 2020. Hard to believe as well. And I just figured we could go on for hours and hours about our favorite incarnations of Eddie. So today we are going to determine the coolest incarnations of Iron Maiden's Eddie mascot.
Yeah.
You cool with that?
What he said.
Cool. Did I even make any sense? Tell us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter if I made sense. Matt.
Zach.
You go first.
All right, fine. I'll go first.
And actually, I should clarify also that while I know that Eddie has popped up on beer cans and video games, we are only talking about incarnations of Eddie that appeared on covers. Now, this could be full album covers, it could be compilations, it could be live albums, it could even be singles, because that's actually what made the mascot so special, is that on even the singles, whether it's Derek Riggs or another artist that the band hired, always found a cool, unique way to incorporate Eddie into the overall theme, which says a lot, because Iron Maiden, especially as Bruce became more comfortable in his role with Iron Maiden, they went down some really progressive and crazy concepts with their music and album. And most of the classic ones with Derek Riggs really did a great job at just fitting him in. Not to say that the other artists didn't do an incredible job too, but I think it's fair to say that when you think of Eddie, you think of Derek Riggs and his work. Matt, now you may proceed with your third list.
All right. I guess I'll start. So, number 1, at least for me, I think one of the coolest incarnations of Eddie ever is the one that was featured on the cover of Somewhere in Time, the futuristic Eddie. The one that looks like Blade Runner. And to me...
Cyborg Eddie,
this one really, for a multitude of reasons. One, because it's probably the one that I looked at the most, because this cover has so many different things inside of it. There are so many Easter eggs on the cover. I'm not going to go into all of them, obviously. I'll pick out a few, like Doctor Who. If you look in the top left, I believe it's the top left, or like somewhere on the left side toward like the halfway up, you'll see the Doctor's iconic blue telephone booth. Mm-hmm. And there are so many just little nods to different things sci-fi in this cover, and Eddie just being at the forefront, the cyborg with the enhanced eye, the more robot-esque rib cage, and the way that Eddie looks on this cover. I just think he looks completely badass.
Other Easter egg that I always loved, the Ancient Mariner seafood restaurant that
yes.
you kind of see in the background. Just so many Easter eggs.
Yeah, there's so cool. Many different things that they did on this cover. And I think I spent so much time staring at the cover just to look at all the different things that are on there. Like they have, if you look to the left of Eddie's gun, there is the Eye of Ra, or whatever it is. It's like an ancient Egyptian symbol. I think they're kind of playing off of the Power Slave album a little bit with that. Mm-hmm. So there's just so many different things to look at on this that I spent so much time looking at this Eddie. I think it really is one of the coolest incarnations of Eddie.
Cool.
Second one for me, we're going to go back to 1983 on the Peace of Mind album with The Trooper. Trooper Eddie with the Union Jack flag running through battle. Bruce Dickinson waves the Union Jack on stage, dresses like Eddie. I mean, how could you not love that, Eddie?
It's a classic.
It's a classic. You have to love this, Eddie.
And that speaks volumes, too, because the Peace of Mind Eddie is arguably just as classic as well. And yet the single artwork is probably outshadows it.
Yeah, I mean, the Trooper Eddie on this one, there's, what else can you say about it?
Yeah.
He's in a red coat. He's British through and through on here, and then at least for me on the cover, just seeing Death loom in the background behind him, I mean, that's really cool too. But yeah, this incarnation of Eddie for me is one of the most classic ones, one of my most favorite. I think he was also on the Iron Maiden beer, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah. It's arguably the most iconic version.
Right.
But sorry, continue.
So that's number 2. And then number 3, I mentioned it a little bit in the one for Somewhere in Time, Power Slave Eddie. 1984. You know, Eddie was larger than life, you know, for Iron Maiden. You know, he kind of made the albums for Iron Maiden. But then to be featured on this cover as like Egyptian god status at the forefront of the temple. And then what's kind of a little disturbing for me is that they're carrying what appears to be a casket into Eddie's crotch, which is kind of weird, but whatever. The album cover really just projects Eddie as this big, majestic Egyptian pharaoh. I mean, it always did it for me. I always loved that cover. So for me, those are my 3 top incarnations of Eddie. Somewhere in Time, The Trooper, and on the Power Slave album cover.
Very cool. Well, now it's my turn. The right list.
You mean the list that's going to mimic my list?
Will it, though?
It will.
So first, I think this is probably going to seem like an easy pick, but I kind of feel like we have to name this version. It's the infamous Killers version of Eddie. Dare I say, I mean, I know that technically we first met Eddie on the single cover for Running Free and then got a closer look at him on the self-titled album, but if you really want to, if you think back to what is the real official like introduction to what Eddie started off as, it's what you see on the Killers, the sophomore album cover. Just the image of him holding up that axe with his victim just like literally hanging on tight to his shirt, begging for his life. It's just so haunting and badass and downright scary that I think we would be doing an injustice if that wasn't at least part of the discussion. So classic Killers era of Eddie is my first pick.
What's interesting to me about that cover, and I always do this with any album cover that's like very detailed, in the lower left-hand corner, right on either side of the light post, they have a storefront called the Killers Sex Shop. Sorry.
No, it's true.
Just think I'd throw that in there.
No, but that's the beauty of Eddie in general, is that Derek Riggs and every artist following him has found a way to add in a little bit of just a little nudge and a like some sort of like tip to the hat to the band's legacy, even early on like that. It's just
fun to find Easter eggs.
Yeah, it's cool. So that's the first one. Second one, I'm gonna nickname this Eddie Aerial Dog Fighter Eddie. He appeared on the single cover for Aces High. It's with Eddie in the cockpit of a fighter plane getting just shot at and shooting other planes down. It's another classic Derek Riggs single artwork. And just something about seeing Eddie looking so sinister and confident, not even like scared, like just like a little smirk, or like, yeah, let's do this. Like just shooting down other planes, just so badass. And it doesn't hurt that it's also for such an incredible song like Aces High too, that it's just, you could hear the song Aces High play in the background of whatever is happening in that moment of time of the cover. Like you can just picture him shooting down planes while Aces High is blasting. So Aerial Dogfighter Eddie on the cover for Aces High single. The third one is going to be a little controversial because it's from a compilation album, and it's not by Derek Riggs. It's actually done by the artist Tom Adams, and I think we can call this one Edward the Great. It's Eddie appearing on a throne with a crown. It's from the 2002 compilation, and something about Eddie with a crown on him and just kind of like sitting there as if like he's waiting for his next victim or for the next person who's being approached to King Eddie to be murdered. It's something really subtle and badass about it. It's definitely not more of the more detailed Eddies or even the most creative, but it's a concept that they hadn't really done before, and it's simple, but they do it really well. And it was almost kind of a cool way to celebrate Iron Maiden's greatest hits. And you could also even argue that for younger fans at the time who were just getting into Iron Maiden, who didn't buy all the albums yet, this was really a lot of young fans' first introduction to Eddie. And to literally put Eddie on a pedestal was almost a really cool way to do that. So a little weird, I know, but I'm going with Edward the Great as my third pick. So to recap, I'm going with classic era Killers Eddie, aerial dogfighter Eddie that appears on the cover for the Aces High single, and Edward the Great that appeared on the 2002 compilation album. So,
how was that the right list?
Because it's perfect.
No, it's
perfect.
not.
But you know what? Because I'm all about compromise, Matt. It's time for a famous deal.
All right, what's your famous deal this time?
Here is what I'm going to propose as the final three. Classic era Killers Eddie.
Okay.
Eddie the Trooper.
Okay.
And Cyborg Eddie.
We'll go with it. Nice and simple.
Yeah. And because honestly, those are the three classic Eddies.
And I would have really been interested to find out, and maybe you who's listening can settle this for me, because I would have put Power Slave Eddie against Edward the Great, because in two different instances, he is this powerful figure sitting on a pedestal. Which one of those do you like better? Facebook, Instagram, Twitter?
It's funny. Normally, I would have gone into a whole fight about it, but if someone was to say Power Slave Eddie, I'd be like, yeah, I won't fight that. But yeah, let's pose that question, Matt. Let's make people suggest what they would prefer. Or better yet, what is your favorite Iron Maiden cover featuring Eddie? Did any of the covers that we named make your list? Is there any that you think were really ridiculous that we even suggested it? Are you upset that none of us suggested the Number of the Beast Eddie?
Or the seventh son of a seventh son Eddie?
Say that 5 times in a row.
Seventh son of a seventh son, 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 seventh son of a seventh son.
Oh, now you're just showing off.
Seventh son.
Boom! 7 times. Did we miss that cover?
By the way, that's the worst one.
Yeah. You know what's funny? So we were starting to discuss this. I know we were about to say goodbye, but no, we're going to make you listen to longer. The actual Eddie on Seventh Son of the Seventh Son is the worst. But if you look at the Eddies that were tied around that time period, that were done for the singles and that were done for just like the B-sides and all that, or even like Eddie the Clairvoyant, those are really cool.
Yeah, and the album cover's just garbage.
The actual cover that they went for the album itself was the lackluster one out of the whole bunch, because I liked what they were trying to do. Whereas if you look at like the live single of Clairvoyant's cover with the 3 faces of Eddie like just going in different directions and shooting lasers and lightning out of their eyes.
If you're familiar with Tool's 10,000 Days cover, it kind of looks like that.
But like maybe arguably more badass, if that makes sense.
Probably.
As you've already heard, we can go down a huge rabbit hole of just a discussion about Eddie. So now we want you to partake in that conversation. Tell us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Friendster, anywhere that allows you to comment on something. Tell us what you think of Eddie and your favorite incarnation of Eddie, and we hope that you listen to another episode soon.
Thanks, guys. Take it easy.